Have you ever heard of unconditional love that goes beyond any borders? Imagine a woman who adopted 3 black children over 10 years ago, and today they do something that will leave you speechless. Get ready. This story will change everything you think about family, love, and giving back. Like a woman who, against all odds, adopted 3 black children at a time when many doubted her ability to cope with the difficulties their arrival represented. Today, more than a decade later, she is living a transformative love, something you will find hard to believe. Because what have these children done for her? It's something that will touch your heart deeply. When she decided to adopt the 3 children, she knew she was making a decision that would change her life forever. She was an ordinary woman with a modest job and a quiet life, but nothing prepared her for what was to come. The children were very young, and the adoption process was long and, for her, an emotional roller coaster. At first, she felt overwhelmed. After all, what did it really mean to be a mother? She knew that giving love was the most important thing, but she didn't know how challenging it would be. The children had come from a painful reality, full of trauma, neglect, and experiences that no child should have to go through. They were suspicious, with the look of someone who had been disappointed countless times. They were afraid to get attached, afraid to trust, and it wasn't long before she realized that the task of winning them over emotionally would be more difficult than she had imagined. Society didn't help either. Living in a small town, in an environment where differences were constantly pointed out, the woman knew she would face resistance. As a white woman, she knew that society would look at her and question, why did she do that? Is she really capable of raising those children? She couldn't ignore the opinions of others. She had to deal with the stares, the heavy words, and even the criticism disguised as concern. But at the same time, she knew she couldn't give up. The children needed her more than ever. They didn't just need a home, they needed someone to believe in them when no one else did. They couldn't be alone in a world that had failed them before. The hardest thing, perhaps, was the fear she felt of failing. Being a mother was not something she had planned to do alone, and she knew that no one was really prepared for it. She wasn't a superhero. She didn't have all the answers. Sometimes the nights were long and the doubts haunted her. Am I enough? Can I really change these children's lives? Can I be the mother they need? She spent sleepless hours thinking about how she could fill the void the children felt. She knew her love was strong, but some nights she wondered if it was enough. She knew that giving them a home was not the same as giving them a family. Family was not just a place where you lived, but a space where you grew up, felt protected, loved, and understood. And she wondered if she could create that environment. Every time one of the children acted suspiciously or closed off, she felt the pain of a world that had been cruel to them. But she couldn't stop. She couldn't give up. She knew they were just as capable as any other child, and it was her mission to give them what no one else had ever given them. A real chance to be loved and to feel part of something bigger, a real family. She understood that the difficulties would be many and that she would often have to be stronger than she imagined to bear the weight of adversity. She didn't have unlimited financial resources, but she did have something that couldn't be measured in numbers: love and patience. She would give anything for these children, even when the whole world seemed to be against her. Every smile she got, every small victory, she knew were steps towards a better life for those 3 little ones she loved so much. The biggest challenge, however, was dealing with the invisible scars from these children's past. They came from a reality marked by deep trauma. They were intelligent children, full of potential, but fear and mistrust were their greatest companions. The woman, who had grown up in a stable and loving environment, didn't know what it was like to feel the weight of such a heavy trauma, and this made her feel powerless. How could she heal the wounds of such young children who had been through so much suffering? She didn't know where to start, but she did know one thing: she wouldn't give up. Even when everything seemed to be falling apart around her, when tiredness took over and doubts returned, she was sure of one thing: the children needed her. And she couldn't fail. Every day was a battle against fear. She didn't know what the future would bring, but she knew that her love for those children made her stronger. With every small achievement, every new step towards a better future, she felt she was fulfilling her mission. But it wasn't easy. She had her own insecurities, her own issues that she needed to resolve. Everyday life was exhausting. The stress of work, the demands of society, the emotional strain. Even so, she never stopped believing that one day things would be different. She had to carry on, for them, for herself, for everything that family could still be. But what she didn't know was that, over the years, it would be this unshakable confidence that would help her overcome the biggest challenges that lay ahead. This woman's story was not about being perfect, but about persevering, about believing that love and dedication could change lives, even when the whole world seemed to say otherwise. She didn't know that her life was about to be transformed in ways she would never have imagined. And most importantly, she didn't know that the children, despite everything, would be willing to give back in ways she never imagined possible. As the years passed, the woman began to realize that her constant struggle was not in vain. When she looked at the 3 children, she felt something growing inside her, a strength she didn't know she had. Every day was a new battle, a new achievement. Perhaps the greatest was the moment when the children began to trust her unconditionally, to open up and let her into their hearts. It was an achievement that she knew was the real victory. The moment when fear and mistrust began to give way to genuine love. The eldest child, who had always been the most difficult to deal with, began to change. It was a slow and gradual process, but it was visible. She began to ask questions about the woman's past, about her life, about how she felt. And more than that, she began to see her as a role model, someone she could trust to guide her. At times, she still found it difficult to express her feelings, but the fact that she began to open up was already a huge step. She was beginning to realize that true love was not something that could be given and taken away at any moment, but something that grew, that became stronger with time and with trust. The change in her was the most noticeable. The suspicious look in her eyes was replaced by a shy glimmer of hope. She began to believe, albeit slowly, that she could be part of something worthwhile. The second child, a boy, was the next to undergo a transformation. He had always been quieter, more introverted. Words were never his allies, but actions were. At first, he reacted to any show of affection with a visible withdrawal, almost as if he was protecting himself from something he didn't understand. But over time, he changed. He began to accept touch, a hug, a simple smile. He, who had previously refused to accept his wife's words of support, began to seek them out. He began to ask for advice about the future, about what he could do to be a better person. And when she saw him trying so hard to improve, she knew she was on the right track. There was something much deeper going on there, something she couldn't explain, but which she felt. It was as if love, in its purest form, was blossoming inside him. He was learning to trust, to believe, not only in her, but also in himself. He was leaving behind the shadows of a dark past. And finally, the youngest. She was always the liveliest, the most outgoing. But even she had her own scars. Her cheerfulness was often a facade for the inner pain she carried. The woman knew this, but how could she help a child who, on the outside, seemed so well adjusted, but on the inside was shattered? The answer lay in being there, every day, without fail. Over the years, the woman began to notice that the girl was learning to open up, to trust people, to believe that she had a future ahead of her, that she had value. The simple fact of being listened to, of being embraced without haste, without pressure, was what made her change. Little by little, she began to deal with her own fears, her own insecurities, and this began to reflect on her self-esteem. Her self-confidence, previously broken and unstable, was being rebuilt. She began to realize that the world was full of opportunities and that, above all, she deserved to be happy. What the woman didn't know, but was beginning to realize, was that each of these moments was a key to transformation. Every little gesture, every word of encouragement, every moment of genuine affection, was a drop that filled a great void inside the children. They were, one by one, learning to live again, learning that the love she gave them wasn't something ephemeral, something that could disappear from one moment to the next. It was something solid, something they could lean on. They began to realize that they had a real mother, a woman who loved and cared about them, who strove every day to be the best mother she could be. The woman not only became a reference point for love, but also for strength and persistence. And the children began to see this. They began to understand that life wouldn't be easy, but that they didn't have to face the world alone. As they began to change, so did the woman. She was becoming the mother she had always known she could be, even in the nights of doubt, even in the days of exhaustion. She began to realize that the greatest gift she could give her children was not just food, clothes, and a roof over their heads, but something much deeper, a sense of belonging. They were finally finding their place in the world, with her, with the family they had created together. And, as difficult as it was, she knew there was nothing more rewarding than seeing her children starting to blossom, starting to believe in themselves, starting to see the future with more hope. The difficulties didn't disappear overnight. There were moments of relapse, times when the wounds of the past still seemed stronger than anything. But every day, the children began to get up faster, to open up faster, to trust faster. And the woman saw that, as much as the children were learning from her, she was also learning from them. They taught her patience, to wait without anxiety, to believe, to never give up, even when all seemed lost. When the children began to reciprocate everything she had given them, when they began to smile genuinely, to embrace her with a trust she didn't know existed, that's when she finally understood the impact her presence had had on their lives. Their transformation was also her own. True retribution didn't come in the form of words, but in gestures, in glances, in tight hugs. The love she had invested had begun to bear fruit in a way she could never have imagined, but which she knew was worth every sacrifice. The most impactful moment of this journey took place on a cold winter's morning. The woman who had always devoted herself tirelessly to her family, now with a stronger heart and a clearer mind, was about to see the true reward for her dedication. She didn't know it, but that day would be the day that would change everything, the day that would make her cry like never before, but for a completely different reason. It was an ordinary morning, like so many others, except that the children, now teenagers, were at a turning point in their lives. She had seen them grow, struggle, fall, and get up. But at that moment, as she looked at them, she knew she wasn't just a mother, she was a witness to a radical transformation, a miracle taking place before her eyes. It was a change that could not be ignored, and the woman knew it with all her soul. The eldest, who had been the most difficult child, the most resistant, was now preparing for college. When she learned of his decision, she couldn't hold back the tears. He, who once trusted no one, who had a wall around his heart, was now making one of the biggest moves of his life. Believing in the future, believing in the opportunities that lay ahead of him. He had won a scholarship to study engineering, something that had seemed impossible when he arrived home with a broken heart and a defeated spirit. The woman who had been his only constant knew that this was the moment of victory, not just for him, but for her too. She saw him, standing up, more confident than she had ever imagined he would be, saying, with watery eyes, "I wouldn't have made it this far without you." It was at that moment that the woman understood the impact of his unconditional love. The effort, the sleepless nights, the arguments, the sacrifices, It had all been worth it. The boy was now becoming a man. But the real turning point was the unexpected gesture of the second son, the most introverted, who had never been good with words, but had always been good with actions. He was at a crucial moment in his life, a moment when he was beginning to understand what it meant to be someone of value. However, he was no longer just focused on his own journey, but also on the mother who had given him so much. He had gotten a part-time job while still in high school, not to help himself, but to help around the house, to help the woman who had always supported him. When he handed her the first paycheck he had earned with his own efforts, his words were simple but charged with emotion. "This is my gift to you. You gave me the chance to be someone, and now it's my turn to give back." The words couldn't have been simpler, but the woman had never known that such a small gesture could mean so much. That was her gift. The certainty that she had fulfilled her mission, that she had transformed lives, not just with words, but with actions, with example. He had learned to sacrifice himself for others, to care, to be responsible. And then, the girl, the youngest, who was always the most cheerful and energetic, but also the most delicate, was the one who brought out the moment of greatest emotion in everyone. She was at a school event, where students had the opportunity to recognize teachers and special people in their lives. When it was her turn, she took to the stage, grabbed the microphone and, in front of all her friends and classmates, began to talk about her family. But it wasn't just an ordinary speech, something anyone would say. She talked about her mother, the woman who took her in and made her believe in herself, who taught her never to give up, even when the world seemed to be against her. She said, her voice shaky but firm, "I know I can be someone, because you showed me what it means to be strong. I know I can face anything, because you taught me not to be afraid to be who I am." The woman in the audience, with tears in her eyes, couldn't believe what she was hearing. The girl who had started out so afraid and insecure was now standing up confidently, sharing with everyone the strength she had learned to have. The woman didn't know how to react to this. She didn't know how to process the emotion that was taking over her body. She was there, surrounded by 3 children who, years ago, were broken children, full of scars that she didn't know how to heal. And now, those same children were becoming whole people, capable of loving and believing in a better future. They were somehow becoming the family she had always known they could be. She didn't need anything else. She didn't need a trophy, public recognition. What she had at that moment, looking at those children, was everything she had ever wanted. To know that she had fulfilled her mission, to know that she had given her best to someone, and that someone was now ready for the world. At that moment, the woman felt the true meaning of being a mother. Being a mother wasn't just about giving life, it was about giving your best, every day, even when everything seemed difficult, even when tiredness was greater than strength. The most important moment in her story was not when she achieved something for herself, but when she saw, clearly and unmistakably, that she had given her children something that no one else could have given them. The opportunity to get back on their feet, to become better people. And that day, she knew for sure that the greatest gift she could ever receive would never be material. It was gratitude and the transformation of her children, and that made her cry. Crying with joy, crying with gratitude, because she knew that by giving back with love, she had generated something that would never be destroyed. The daily effort, the sleepless nights, the words of comfort in times of pain, everything had led to this moment of pure gratitude and recognition. Her children, who came into her life broken, were now rebuilt, ready to face the world with confidence and courage. The woman no longer had to wonder if she had made the right choice in adopting those children, because she knew for sure that every sacrifice, every tear shed, had been worth it. Those children were no longer the children she had adopted, they were the people she had helped to form, and that was the greatest legacy she could leave. The true power of retribution came not from something tangible, but from the transformation that took place in those hearts. She realized that what she had done for them was more than just take them in. She had helped them to discover themselves, to become who they really were. And the moment they looked at her, with gratitude in their eyes, was when she understood that she had given them the greatest gift possible, the chance to believe in the future, to transform their own lives. The cycle was complete, and deep down she knew that everything she had been through, all the suffering and hardship, was now justified by the happiness and fulfillment of those she had helped to save. That was the real miracle, and that was the moment she had always known would come one day, when dedication and unconditional love finally turned into a new life, full of possibilities. And for those of you who like a good story and watched it to the end, leave your comment below. I stayed until the end. And there's one more thing. Two policemen walk into a crowded restaurant. They laugh out loud, point at an old black man sitting alone, and start making humiliating comments. But then, something unexpected at his table changes everything. And you need to hear what happened next. Prejudice is a wound that many pretend doesn't exist. This is the story of a man who experienced it himself, but who, in a moment of silent courage, taught a lesson that no one in that restaurant would ever forget. Get ready, because this story is going to move you. That's the theme of the next story that's fixed here on the screen. Just click and start watching. I'll see you there.